Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m., both here in the building and live online. So whether you're in Bristol or far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the studio community lead. I should really be able to pronounce that. I'm a white man in my late 30s with long hair and a beard, wearing a red woolly jumper. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space, hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio. I see a lot of new faces today. Anyone who's new to the studio, put your hand in the air. Oh, wow. OK. That might be a record. So for all of you, what is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding, product development to performance art. We're a partnership between Watershed, the University of the West of England, and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And we offer studio space, desk space, meeting rooms, events, and opportunities, all for free for our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And most of all, we're a space for people to take risks in their practice, with embryonic ideas, and make time for collaboration. Now, quick bit of housekeeping. Feel free to move around. You're not at school. You can go make a cup of tea, get a glass of water, whatever you like. Please don't use the microwave. It interferes with the induction loop. If you need to take a break at any point, we have a quiet space just through this wall to my left. Just pop in there. No need to ask or anything. There are fire exits at either end of the studio. So if you hear a fire alarm, that is probably real. The studio team will direct you to them. They're at that side. And accessible toilets, including baby change. I don't see any babies, but just in case, are found in the corridor just over there next to the kitchen. There will be a Q&A at the end of the talk. Those of you who are watching online can just pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Those of you who are in the building will put your hands in the air like we're at school, I guess. So you can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at PM Studio UK on Twitter, as long as Twitter still exists, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social once Twitter stops existing, and at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. On Instagram. So now I would like to introduce our speaker for today. Vince Baidoo is a studio resident, a creative technologist, and a social entrepreneur. And in this talk, he's going to explore AI and art, which is a very hot topic. He'll be talking about the good and the bad, the unexpected ways that AI can help people, and the challenges we might face with it. And he may even hazard an opinion as to what constitutes real art. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Please join me in giving a big, warm welcome to Vince.
So, as you said, this is Artificial Intelligence, the Good, the Bad, and the Edge by me. So thank you all for coming, I appreciate it. The concept of artificial intelligence is as old as human origin stories. My definition is an equation is a mathematical formula, an algorithm is a set of equations, and artificial intelligence is comprised of multiple algorithms. The earliest definition is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs, from the 1950s. The contemporary definition of artificial intelligence usually means the technique of machine learning or neural networks, which came in around 2010. And today we're going to be looking at why everybody's using the phrase artificial intelligence as of, I would say, the end of last year, 2022. So we're going to start off with generative art. Generative art, AI art, is a phrase that has been used since the creation of modern computer graphics in the 1960s. It's always been a point of contention to whether it's real art or not. So the term generative art composes both of those that feel they can artistically create with a computer's assistance and those that think that the computer system takes the credit as author. Deep Dream, which is an image here, came from Google. This was neural networks that were directed towards images. So generative adversarial networks, these were the main AI image generation until diffusion models came in 2021. So these images here were created on a program app website called Midjourney. And Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and DALL-E are all image diffusion neural networks. These apps gave rise to the image prompting that you've probably heard about. So in the case of Stable Diffusion, it was taking 100 terabytes worth of information, which was around 600 million images, compressing that into a 2 gigabyte file, and then that on the fly can create images. And so when they say that it's one of the most popular softwares ever, that's what they're referring to, this 2 gigabyte file. This has come with legal ramifications. So in January of this year, 3 artists came together and filed a copyright infringement lawsuit against Stability AI, Midjourney, and DeviantArt because their art was in the data set. The outcome of this court case will provide some clarity in the future how AIs are modeled and what the regional differences are going to be between those regulations. At least one person has been rejected copyright for an all AI generated children's book, and it was produced on Midjourney, and Midjourney explicitly hands the rights over to the prompter. So this is a very new chapter in a decades-old conversation. Both anti-AI art and AI trolls are very loud, but as you can imagine, the majority are images just being created in people's imagination. And so to explore this, I don't give away my prompts, but I wanted to show you an example of what some people call creative prompts. So at the time when I was thinking about it, I was like, the next one that I find, I'll present in the talk. And I found a pretty quirky one, so it's pretty cool. So, sorry, my notes have just flown off into a different direction here. So this is upside down. So let me find myself. So, there we go. Yeah. Upside down is a 2-word creative prompt. Upside down things aren't in the data set. So when you type it in, it creates these. So the 4 at the top are all the same seed prompt, and it was just upside down teacup. And so because it's the same seed, you can see within the same seed, it's varying how it's interpreting this idea of being upside down. Down there on the left is upside down house, and this is upside down horse. So this is like a warning, don't type this in around kids, because it will come up with, that's the nicest upside down horse I could find. So, is AI art? So before we get into that, let's look at some of the more specific rejections. Is AI art good? So I would answer, the simple answer is yes. I think that the only reason why the debate is happening now is because we crossed the good threshold. But I'm not going to pretend like I don't understand the fogginess surrounding it. Now, there's a concept that I'm obsessed with, and I call it chronological anchoring. And I've written a first draft of a book of it in 2020. So you're going to have to indulge me here as I make a very long-winded example for a small point. So, if I can have your imagination for 2 seconds. For those of you who are blessed with sight, imagine yourself in the passenger side of a moving vehicle whilst driving down a long road with no traffic. In the furthest distance, you can just make out that there's a billboard. From the distance you are, the billboard is less than a millimeter squared in your vision, but as you know it's a billboard because of pattern recognition. As the billboard gets big enough to be about a centimeter squared of your vision, your brain knows that it should be able to see some of the contents of the billboard, but you can't. And as you stare at the billboard, it's only getting slightly bigger with every dozen seconds that go past. And what you see on the billboard is constantly morphing inside your own head. So it's morphing colors, it's morphing shapes, and it's not an hallucination, but it's morphing nonetheless. As the billboard is about to take 1.5 centimeters squared of your vision, your mind tells you, aha, this is a billboard for that orange juice company. And your mind shows you the green and orange marketing that you're familiar with on the billboard. And then literally, within the blink of an eye, the billboard takes up a critical amount of space of your vision, and you can see clearly, with no debate, that it's an advert for a £400,000 watch, and the marketing is brown and purple. Now, the billboard is a distance away, So it takes just under 10 minutes to drive past it. And the whole time, the browns and the purples, the lines and the circles are just getting clearer and clearer. Now, on the way back from the same trip, going in the opposite direction, you see the billboard up close, and then it gets further and further away. But no matter how small the billboard gets in your vision, from an inch squared to a centimeter squared to a millimeter squared, it's impossible to physically see the oranges and greens of the advert that was never there. Until the last nanometer, you will see only browns and purples. So I think that a lot of people feel like they got tricked into seeing something that they now can't unsee. And that can be a very uncomfortable feeling to go through. No doubt there were people who were shown AI art without knowing that it was an AI art, had a positive emotion, had a positive feeling, liked it, and then were told, oh, it was made by AI, and then that left them with like a negative stain rather than a neutral one of the concept itself. So another simpler example of this is, have you ever been eating food with someone and they were enjoying themselves, and then you told them a certain bit of food was in there, and then suddenly the same bowl switched flavors? As far as I'm aware, people aren't lying when they do this, but they are putting emotions before logic. Now, as it relates to art, art is about emotions. And so this is definitely not the arena to discount that. But the question is somebody else's emotions becoming your opinion? So, let me get this blank screen off for you. So, is AI art theft? This is an interesting one because it has two sides. There are people who see AI art as theft because of the data set that it's created on, and there are people who see AI art as theft because of its capability of taking artists' jobs. So someone once said that great art is still. I get the sentiment, but I always thought that was a weird saying. In terms of a very quick summary of art and theft, firstly, you don't win any war without stealing people's art and symbols according to human history. So most people's cultures is the last person that they stole it from. Secondly, copyright as a concept was invented so that specific cultures could go and steal and appropriate stories from other cultures, whilst letting everybody know from the thieving culture that they're the original thief and that no one else is to steal that particular bit of culture. Thirdly, it's widely known that in society and in much of the infrastructure that we have, there's just industries based around stealing, siphoning, and middle managing artists. So some people might describe it as exploitative, some people might say that that's just theft of art. And fourthly, and maybe most importantly to this specific conversation about AI art on the internet has always been shared in a peer-to-peer fashion. And that was deemed theft by the mainstream. So back in the day, if you put somebody's art on the internet without them knowing, that was a violation in and of itself, because there was an understanding that once it's on the internet, it's everybody's. But I'll get back to that. As it relates to AI artists, AI taking AI artists' job, if you think that AI can make good art, then you can't deny that it's going to be taking artists' job. So I think it's going to be taking artists' job. But I also think that there's artists that it won't be able to take their job. And I also think that it's going to be able to create jobs that couldn't have been perceived or executed beforehand. So any three of those perspectives, it makes sense, and it makes sense that people were passionate and emotional about any three of those directions that AI art can take. But again, the question is somebody else's emotions dictating your opinion and the actions that you take? Done it again. So the next bit is AI art, what is it? Is AI art theft? And then, is AI art talentless? Now, I'll be honest, with this part of the conversation around the talent that it takes, I think that it makes everybody look undesirable. So picture a person in a club running around telling everybody not to be attracted to a specific person because they had plastic surgery. Now, you have a scientific point, and yet undoubtedly you're the most unattractive person right now, and it has nothing to do with looks. And then on the other side, imagine somebody putting out an open challenge to show how talented they are compared to somebody else who wouldn't use AI art in their art. To prove what? Is modern art talentless? Is pressing a button on a camera talentless? Is modifying your voice for music talentless? Again, all tastes being equal, is somebody else's taste your particular opinion? So to address it directly, is AI art? Maybe, at least as much as NFTs possibly. But I also wouldn't argue if people looked at it and just said it's pure science, and if people looked at it and said, oh, this is some kind of a magic happening. Either way, it's definitely creating unique artifacts. So in terms of the conversation around AI, this is probably something that a lot of people have seen come into it, and I think it's a big part of the conversation. So this is ChatGPT, and it is a pre-trained language generation model developed by OpenAI, and it's based on a transformer architecture, and it's been trained on a large amount of text data, so it's just crunching words. The model has been refined to perform a variety of natural language processing tasks, such as text generation, text completion, text classification, question answering, and more. If you've tried it, no matter how you slice it, ChatGPT is an amazing tool. And for those that don't know, the way that it works is you type something in the bottom. So here I have typed, how do you build a computer from scratch? And then you get a lot of that a lot of time because it's been rinsed so much. But whilst you wait, tells you to come back in an hour, you can just get some phenomenal answers very, very quickly. And they will all be geared around exactly what you've asked. So I tried to get some more complicated and like nuanced examples, but I just didn't transfer very well into like straight pictures. But I've still got a few here to go into. So we've got here just a job description, and it's coming through. What we've got here, writing a story. So up here I just said write a story about a boy not having it. So that's, you know, it's not particularly descriptive. You could be taking that anyway. And I just like the first line. It's like one thing he wasn't known for was his patience. We did that there. Write an elevator pitch for a rare steak smoothie. Now, that was just some random thing that came to my head. But I like what they did. In my mind, I wasn't thinking about, you know, gym or anything like that, but it does make sense. Write a business plan for an odd sock brand. So just like the formatting, obviously it's like well presented. Summarize Google as a business. I just thought I would have had a pretty hard time like trying to do that, just in terms of the amount of things that it does, but it's got its own restrictions, and I think originally I put a word limit on it. Write a press release for a game made an RPG about a Jamaican cheesy pork. Yeah, it had an attempt, it had a try. Product description here. So for this one, it was just, I said for a gold future trunk statue, that's from an anime called Dragon Ball Z. It already knew that, so I was just like, okay, that's interesting that it already kind of could pull those details. Again, so this is where it's like, it starts getting a little bit messy, but if you see at the top, it just says, this is from Newgrounds, and then it's kind of, I've taken a copy and paste from the Newgrounds website, and then right at the end, I've just said, make it sound like BBC quality. So the actual prompt is just, this is from Newgrounds, make it sound like BBC quality, and then I've copy and pasted the stuff in there. So in terms of like people who want to practically use it, this is actually how you get most of the functionality out of it. It's like you copying, pasting from the things, and then it being able to take your information and give it back to you in different formats. So 3 tweets about gatekeepers, blog posts. So this is what all your social media marketers are using now at the moment. Write a polite post for a forum asking. So if you try to use forums, you can kind of get outed just for like saying things in the wrong way. So I was like, can you give me a way to post politely? and it gave me that one there. Again, so this was like a budgeting one, just showing like a little bit of like the mathematical capability. So the idea, again, it's a little bit unclear, but the idea was that somebody could just have notes and they're randomly writing their notes in like a human fashion, like, okay, I spent this and spent that. And then you could just copy and paste it in there and then tell it to give you like real life examples. So in this one, it's how much time could I spend at a festival and what should I change? And so this was the last one here. So this was a fictional note given to a child, and then it doesn't say anywhere on there about mum, dad, or anything like that. But the request is write a note for my dad saying that I've done everything. And so it kind of already can interpret, okay, this is probably who the dad is, you're probably the child. And all of those other things that is inferred. So like I said, these are some very simple examples, but hopefully it's opened up the imagination a little bit. So what I'm not showing you here is ChatGPT's ability to remember the context of a conversation to a limited extent. So previously, all of as the dialogue got more detailed, you'd have to save it in a text file and keep your own records. And now, but yeah, when you did it in that way, because it's actually interpreting your input organically each time, you can put the same things in and get slightly different results, which is the exciting part of it. But it's also good now because they have ways in which you can save it, so you can go directly back to that part of the conversation. So ChatGPT is trained on data sets older than 2021, and it's not connected to the internet. And what I was planning on showing here was a web extension that would allow you to connect this functionality into the internet. But a big announcement was made yesterday, which I want to go into. So before we get into that, I want to get into a small origin story for ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is born out of an organization called OpenAI. OpenAI was started in 2015 with the aim of being ethical, open, and always free artificial intelligence research and development organization started by people like Elon Musk. Because of this original foundation in openness, it's had a great and highly interactive community, which is always nice, but has proven essential to creating these great artificial intelligence models. In 2019, OpenAI got purchased by Bill Gates and others, a profitable arm was created, and research stopped being open source. So soon after they released GPT-3, which is the base layer of ChatGPT, they then made these public-facing arms public. So the announcement that was made yesterday was that Microsoft, who's now part owner of OpenAI, have integrated the newest and most powerful GPT model, dubbed GPT-4, into their Bing search and Edge browser. They have dubbed it the co-pilot to the internet, and the idea is that search, answers, chat, and creation should all be there from the front page. So this speaks directly to the good, the bad, and the edge of AI. So, neurodiversity refers to the idea that neurological differences such as autism, ADHD, and dyslexia, amongst others, should be recognized and respected as natural and valued aspects of human diversity rather than being treated as a medical problem or disorder. Proponents of neurodiversity argue that the neurological differences are not inherently negative and that individuals with these differences should be provided with the support and accommodations they need to reach their full potential. So the announcement for the new Bing came yesterday or 2 days ago, and I haven't used it. And me personally, I'm not rushing to try and get my hands on it. But I genuinely feel that if you're looking after somebody who has some type of neurodiversity and you haven't looked into these types of platforms, you could be doing somebody a big disservice, and it might be you or them. With that in mind, I want to extend the definition of neurodiversity to that each person's brain is unique, just like a fingerprint is distinct. And so in that sense, I see these tools leveling the playing field for everyone. The chat examples that I gave beforehand, that I just shown, they could have been labeled for neurodivergent people, for disabled people, people with language barriers, young people, old people, lazy people, organized people, curious people. Just like calculators, I see this being really useful for some and essential for others. And as someone who was diagnosed with dyslexia fairly early on, I can definitely say it's one of the keys to my full potential. And with that, before we move on from the chatbots, I want to go into my favorite part of the AI assistants. So I've been using AI assistants mainly in helping me code. Testing the abilities by coding prototypes for my holographic display, side badge, and other apps, having the assistants is nothing short than a cure for multiple mental illnesses that historically are just part and parcel of the programming industry. The last time I gave a talk at the Pervasive Media Studio in person was my talk on virtual marginalization. And this was research that I did for the Southwest Creative Technology Network, exploring how marginalized communities may be further or lesser marginalized in what was then being looked at as the immersive landscape. Now, some might call it Web3 metaverse landscape, but either way, I was comparing that to old traditional media's and social media's treatment of marginalized communities. I went into it thinking that the conclusion was to replace the coding for those communities, and the outcome I actually came out with was that more people from those communities need to learn how to code. We now have the best of both worlds. Not only is this software able to produce code for you from natural language and translate from one coding language to another, I feel it's one of the best tutors to learn how to code. So just in this example here, I had to squish it down a little bit. So this is a representation of the holographic display inside of Unity. On the side here, literally all I did was, in Unity, create a new script, took the template of that new script. Oh, I've added a shape object in there, and then just told it afterwards. So in this example, I'm saying, edit it so that it will show a triangular grid using the spheres in the prefab. So I got the spelling wrong and it still did it there. But again, it's like by taking a base layer of any script and then adding that with the natural language, that's when you start to see the outcome. So it's not purely just saying the words, but any amount of coding experience, and it literally puts you like in an exponential position. And like I said, if you don't have any coding experience and you're starting off and your questions are, how would I learn how to code? How could I start with C#? It's just a lot better responses than some of the forums who, because they have knowledge and they're probably right to some degree, but they want to dictate exactly how and when you learn particular things. So the Codex AI is the model that learned how to code. And learning the ins and outs of practical code going through GitHub, when it learned the practical aspects of code and then added that to the hidden meanings and connections of things. So this was things like, why do coders name functions in a certain way? Why do they put certain comments on there? When it combined those two things, it gave it quote unquote reasoning. And this reasoning is the power behind all of the AIs that you've seen pop up. So the AIs that have been created, effectively, it's like them mixing things, and they've seen that by mixing they can create something stronger. But at the basis of them is this ability to code and this understanding of reasoning as it relates to name and hard-coded functions. So what I've just shown you now in these two examples is text-to-image and text-to-text AIs. Out there now, they're developing text-to-3D, text-to-motion, text-to-video, video-to-text, video-to-speech, text-to-speech, and so on. So at this point, I would like to introduce you to the edge. And because of Microsoft's announcement, I get to double down on the main point of this talk. So for me, what I would like for people to take away from this talk is that every time you think about AI, is that you think about the edge to some degree, and I don't mean the Microsoft edge. So Edge computing is a distributed computing paradigm. So it's an architecture, it's not a particular set of hardware or a particular set of software. It aims to bring computing and data storage closer to the devices and sensors that generate and collect data. The main idea behind edge computing is to move some of computing and the data processing tasks away from the centralized cloud server towards the edge of the network, closer to the source of data. This enables real-time data processing and reduces the latency and bandwidth required for sending data to the cloud for processing. Edge computing is particularly useful for the Internet of Things and other devices with limited computing power and connectivity, as it also allows them to perform complex tasks locally without relying on the cloud. This leads to improved reliability, faster response times, and lower costs for data and transfer of storage. So if you look up what edge computing is, those will be the kind of answers that you get, and it is correct. But I'm wary of the repetitive use cases and scenarios used to illustrate the edge architecture. Nuclear bunkers that can't afford to lose a millisecond, driverless cars, 5G. I was gonna say it was some kind of a conspiracy until I found a small quote on Wikipedia that said the other side, and that counts as mainstream. So this was from the Wikipedia Edge Computing. On the other hand, by keeping and processing data on the edge, it's possible to increase privacy and minimize the transmission of sensitive information to the cloud. Furthermore, the ownership and collected data shifts from the service providers to the end users. Describing the edge is how you articulate what level of privacy you are on. And edge computing is how you articulate what level of ownership you have over data and data processing. So I have heard many names and ways to describe the different layers in the edge. So first I'm going to tell you an answer, tell you how I refer to it, and then what else I've heard. So the device layer, this is the lowest layer in edge computing architecture and consists of the physical devices such as the Internet of Things, sensors, cameras, and everything else used to generate data. Then the edge layer is the computing in the middle layer between the devices that generates data and the cloud servers, so where they store data and process data. So it's essentially a network of computers and equipment that's located near the device layer. And then the cloud layer. So this is the highest layer in edge computing architecture and refers to the centralized cloud servers that provide data and storage and processing capabilities. The cloud layer is used for long-term data storage, complex data processing, and data analytics. So I call the device layer the personal edge. If it's personally yours and you can physically keep it safe, even if it's a server that other people have access to and may be considered cloud or edge layer, it's not strictly, and so not strictly a device, it's still a personal layer to you, and so I would consider it part of your personal edge. The edge layer I call the collective edge. If the processing power or data that you're sharing is with people that you can verify, it can be used to collective benefit of all involved. Now, if it just takes that data and shifts it to the cloud, then that's a different story. And the cloud layer, the centralized cloud. So I've also heard of the personal edge layer being called the edge layer, edge, and the extreme edge. And I've heard of the community edge layer being called fog, the far edge, and the city edge. In 2020, one of the things that plagued my mind was why a city like Bristol would let Uber and Deliveroo be the only companies to operate. Why in such global confusion would we use our personal and collective edge power in such a way? Deliveroo, Uber, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, etc. These are all artificial intelligences. The AI effect refers to the phenomena where artificial intelligence technologies are often considered less remarkable or less advanced than they actually are because people have a tendency to downplay their achievements after the fact. Some people are already doing this with social media. OpenAI, so the creator of ChatGPT, DALL-E, Whisper, OpenAI is a centralized cloud artificial intelligence. Stability AI, so the people who made Stable Diffusion and other things, they produce personal edge AI. Advanced personal edge AI has the power to be a new education system and a great general assistant. To be able to produce coherent words and images on the fly gives you the ability to create infinite curriculums. And as mentioned before, these models themselves are only gigabytes in size. And I think that owning a powerful personal edge AI will be a sign of sovereignty in the not too distant future. And so, with that, I'm coming towards the end of the talk now. So, whether they were made by corporate giants or vigilante billionaires, there are technologies here that have the potential to open up more freedom. And they fit in the same devices that you would need to watch this video back. If you have access to a device like this, then you have access to some of these opportunities. And so when getting advice about AI, consultations, tutorials, especially if you're getting it face-to-face and direct, these are some of the things that I want you to consider because of the contention surrounding the subject. So, planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is a marketing strategy, can't say that for some reason, that involves designing products with a limited lifespan. So consumers are encouraged to replace them sooner rather than later. If you're getting advice about AI and your advisor tells you that AI can't do something as well as it actually can, so that you have to pay their human associate indefinitely, I would consider that a form of planned obsolescence. And this can happen because people think that you're underprivileged, but it can also happen because people think that you're too privileged. Gatekeeping plays a crucial role in controlling access to resources and opportunities and is not a problem in and of itself. I feel like the problem is that this recent wave of AI is a gatekeeper killer in and of itself. And so even the super astute technical people that for the last 20 years have avoided all of the disruptions that technologies have caused for every other industry, now that it's on them, they have an incentive to not give as up-to-date information as possible. And the last one is selective outrage. So selective outrage, I think, is the one that I see most common in this particular conversation. And so when I think about tech and I think about the downsides of tech, I think about the Congolese that have to go and mine to be able to make any of these technologies possible. When I think about AI and I think about the possibilities of AI, I think about what it can do in places like Africa, the Caribbean, as well as, a place like Bristol because I live here, but also like Bristol because of its creativity. That's where my mind goes. If there's someone who doesn't think about the Congolese when they think about tech, and they don't think about black improvement when they think about AI, of course they reserve the right to be outraged about other things. But it doesn't give them the right to select my outrage or my passions in particular. And so, in ending, I'll say that, and to go back to the AI art bit, because I said that I would, is the AI art theft? I don't think it's any more theft than when bots are trained on text and tweets and those kind of things. And so, as I said, social media is an artificial intelligence that we're currently embedded in that has consumed much of our life. So maybe it is theft in the sense that we've created a trend of theft based on our associations and how we integrate with social medias. A lot of what goes viral online is about copying what somebody else did directly. So it is possible that it's coming through. But what I have seen is a lot of things that I would consider abuses. So training an AI art model on somebody who's just died within hours or a day so that you could mock their family is completely not on. And training models just to taunt living artists seems very immature as well. And I feel like the biggest problem with AI art was the deepfakes. And they've been really, really good for years now. So still part of the problem. The people who were actually suing for the art, I think, them being the small guys going up against billionaires, I hope that they as individuals can get some money from the scenarios, again, whether it's because of emotional situations. But in terms of the actual tech, I think that regardless of what happens in that individual case, or even if all models right now get classified as some sort of theft, there will be ways to create the models without using people's art. The outcomes will come back again, and we'll just have to start the debate from wherever it was last left off. I'd also want to point out at this part that I don't consider this as some kind of a specific black conversation. My point in bringing up those nuances is that I think that this whole thing is about individuals. And so because that's who I am as an individual, that's what I'm bringing up. But I feel like every person has that individual priority and that individual passion. And I think that, the point of this talk is so that you don't have an outside influence on what you think would be possible and where your imagination goes in terms of what you think that this should be used for. If you can't tell, personally, I'm very, very excited with the potential of what can happen here. And I'm also very optimistic about, some of the things that I plan on doing in individuals. But that's just my emotions. That's just my opinion. And I appreciate you for listening. Oh. He's not going to do it. Doesn't want to do it. Computer says no.
Well, thank you very much, Vince. That was a lot of spicy takes in there.
Yes.
I think there's probably some opinions in the room. Also, I'm pretty sure that's the most anyone has ever talked about Microsoft Bing at one of these.
Yes, yes.
So well done on that. We have about 15 minutes for some questions. Anyone in the room? Put your hand in the air. Or I think we have YouTube at the back. So I'm going to give you a microphone. You are not going to be able to hear yourself. It's for the people online.
I just had a question about what you think AI art could do for performance art in particular, and how it might impact it, what it might look like in the future.
In terms of performance art, instinctively, I think it would be some kind of, just like the live generation, like what the capabilities of the same kind of effort that somebody would have to do in something being pre-planned. So, somebody coming to a building and going, okay, because of this building's shape, because of this building's lighting, I'm going to put this particular image here, and it looks a particular way. Being able to code those things in, so just being, okay, these are the shapes, these are the colors, these are the sorts of things, and then it being able to generate it in real time. So I think that, just in the same way that when you're playing a computer game, it's taking all of your information in real time and then making those kind of decisions. I think that that's where the instinctive potential would be, is that probably a similar quality of art to previously, but it just being able to be completely personalized to that situation. So I think,
Anybody else? Tim, be nice.
Oh, here we go.
Hi, Vince.
Hello, Tim.
Thanks a lot. It's a great talk. And you're particularly right to raise the political issues, which I have lots of questions about. But
One of them
actually, I want
is
to concentrate on on what you've presented in the way of its capabilities.
Yes.
Because you've done two things that bother me about AI discourse.
Yeah.
One is you've anthropomorphized it. You kept talking about it interpreting, knowing,
Yeah.
and I would certainly claim it does no such thing. It's merely a statistical function. It has no human qualities. It's nothing like a person. And secondly, you haven't really talked about it getting things wrong.
Yep.
So just to give a counterexample, I've used ChatGPT very little, but I asked it, I said, I've got a triangle and one of its angles is 30 degrees. What are the other angles? And it said both the other angles were 150 degrees.
Yeah.
Now, if you know anything about mathematics, you know that's absurd.
Yep.
I also asked it through Bing, I said, is there a fish in the sea? And it said, no, nothing lives in the sea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it actually adduced the Red Sea.
Specifically.
I mean, in its favor, I hadn't said which sea I meant, but...
Yeah.
And the thing is, it has completely unknowable error modes.
Yep.
And although it comes up with useful answers sometimes, I'm just wondering what you think about what we do about the fact that it actually doesn't have any knowledge.
Yeah.
It's just regurgitating a statistical salad of what it's found on the internet.
Yeah. No.
So, I mean, what do we do about that? Because we can cherry pick and do the right, get the stuff we like. But what about all the bad stuff? What about all the prejudice stuff apart from anything else?
Yeah, no, all really, really great points. So when I was making this talk, and as I was like editing it down, I was trying to like, even though I knew I had my biases and I was putting it as positive, it's like I was trying to take out as much as my own, like, I think this bit's bad, I think this bit's great. Ultimately, I think that ChatGPT and OpenAI is kind of like a bad thing, you know, and part of it is what you're saying. My solution to it is that if everybody has the focus that the aim is to have a personalized, personal edge AI, what that means is it's something that it's in your control, which you're editing, which you're putting your biases on. So it's so biased, but it's also really unbiased in how it allows me to change it, if you know what I mean. So if you had your own personal edge AI, you could see that error and you could modify that error, and then it would be, that's how you would be building the intelligence in it. If the model goes down the social media route and we end up with these cloud centralized AI, then we're going to be exactly where you were talking about. Plus on top of that, it all just answers being able to be paid for, and propaganda, well, we're going to end up back in the same situation. So that my personal solution about it is about you taking responsibility, and that's why I kind of get what you're saying about, you know, kind of turning it into a little pet, because that's how I see it. I think that people need to see AIs as a thing that, like, I have this one and I've spent this amount of time curating it into what it is that I need to be, because out the box, I don't think there's ever going to be an out-the-box solution. And if there was an out-the-box solution, that would probably be the step towards dystopia. You know, like one thing that is going to give everybody the answers. I feel like it should be, that's why I brought up the thing about Bristol. I feel like there should be a Bristol AI, which is just, okay, this one here, it's Bristol-centric, it's about our data, it has our best interests at heart, and that it can never be unbiased. We're going to purposely make it biased for these particular things. But you are right to state that, like, when I'm on ChatGPT, I asked it 2 + 2, it got it wrong. You know, it can just, it's like you're saying, it's not smart, it's not thinking, it's just putting a letter after another letter that it thinks would make most sense beforehand. So I've got friends who are in the university thing and they've had to mark stuff, and the only way that they can tell if it's ChatGPT is because it just completely fabricates resources. So the actual texting looks human, but when you look, it's like a lot of errors, like a lot of errors in there.
Just really briefly, I mean, I really love that idea that we would own it in a way, but you do realize that you need computing resources that only fantastically wealthy corporations and governments can train.
This is the thing, though.
No one else has that word. Not even universities can't do it.
You need that to make it, But then once they make it, all of these things, so again, I don't know the specifics, but from what I'm hearing, ChatGPT is a 40 gigabyte file. You have to have the 10th most powerful computer to take all the data and crunch it, but then once you crunch it, it's a 40 gigabyte file. So again, this is why we're in a sweet spot, because like you just said, if those big companies decide to crunch the file and don't put it out, so that's Stability AI, they're putting it out there. If they didn't do that, we'd have no way of doing it. So these AIs that you can get now and put on your personal edge, in a year's time, they might not be there. And again, this is the whole AI effect thing. When people start getting used to something, then they can change the names, then we don't quite know what the concept is that we're holding on, and then these periods of time go. So just like there was a certain period where people would advertise through Google and it was amazing for them. They were just like, oh, I'm an independent, I found all, there was that little sweet spot, and then it gets corporatized. So yeah, it's like it takes these huge computers to make it, but the crazy thing is it is just a tool of compression. Like that's all it's doing is compressing information. So yeah, you can physically, you have enough storage space to have one, but you don't have the power to make one, for sure.
Any more questions? Ready? Yeah, there.
I guess maybe to return to that idea about AI art not being, suggesting that AI art isn't theft, because I think, I don't know, there seems to me like there's an issue around there about authenticity and credibility. So I'm thinking about the jobs that an AI art can take. So, I mean, looking at the images that you've pulled up, they would slot very well into children's literature, into young adult literature, thinking about those book covers and the way that publishing utilizes images like that to kind of sell books. And so thinking about that as a potential job that could be taken by an AI art piece, art maker, that's where then, how do you credit that? Because that is someone literally just regurgitating other people's artwork to then, that's something that regurgitating other people's artwork for a capitalistic gain. But the person who originally made the artworks that were able to create that isn't involved in that process, isn't being remunerated. And so, yeah, I think I just want to reopen that theme of debate when it comes to AI art not being or being theft, because I don't know if I fully got the answer on it, about it being the reason, what your justification for it not being theft.
No, I appreciate that, because definitely, again, in my head, I didn't want to be too this or that, because there's like an open court case, and then that will kind of, that will be like where everything lands in it. So back when Facebook first started, they had everybody's faces on theirs, and Facebook was making a collection of all of our faces. And so then that's how it would know, like you would tag it, by you tagging it, you did the information, and then it picked it up, all of those things. Then you move forward, that now there's an algorithm that knows what a face is, and it does it by triangulating. And then you mix those two things together, and then it can make original faces from nothing. So by the time you get to the point where it can triangulate, you would be able to create someone's face without needing the original one there in the first place. And so that's where I think it gets sticky, because people think of it as in, oh, it's got this database of images and it's copying, pasting, and it's stealing it. But like I said in the first example, it was 100 terabytes worth of images that was compressed to 2 gigabytes. So it's not actually remembering the images. What it's doing is it's learning the equations of how it was formed. So it's like watching somebody else dance and then doing the dance. You haven't kind of physically taking it. So this is the reason why it is sticky, because I think that people can get too focused on it being art as theft, and then if they create a way that doesn't require any of the data set, but then still is able to produce the images, it's like they'll lose their whole foundation of their argument, when there is a reason to have a foundation of the argument, because it's about how humans are going to interact with it. So it's like, it needs the data to be able to figure out like its quote unquote triangulation, but if you take any, like if you've got 600 million images and you take one of those person's images out, you would be able to create that one person's image that you've taken out without it being in there, if it kind of makes sense. So it's like, that's why I understand it from both perspectives. Like I said, I hope the people suing get money because it's the little person, and these are like billionaires making this money off other people. But I actually don't think on a technical level, it's actually stealing, because it's almost like if it was a robot that was just looking at the images and taking in the visual data through like 2 cameras, and like so if like a robot came in here and could look around at all of this art and take the information, would you say that it's been like fed the data and that it's like stealing the images? Or is it that it's able to kind of, it's got this quote unquote level of perception, if you know what I mean? Like, is it, I suppose it's like the separation from art and mathematics. You know, like there is, what it's proven is that actually even down to like the real nuances of art, that it can be broken down to a mathematical level. And so like I'm saying, I don't think it's theft, but I think that because it is like a corporate grab, like these are companies doing what they're doing for money, I think that there still might be a space for artists that have been mistreated in this road to getting to these things, that they might still deserve compensation as like individuals. Ish. Yeah.
All right. I think we have time for, well, one quick question and one quick answer, Vince.
Yes.
From online.
Great. We've got a few questions online, but I'll just lead with one. So someone asks, how can the average person incorporate AI into their day-to-day life?
Just figure out what written tasks that you do. Like if you just figure out what written tasks, that's basically where I would start. And figure out what parts of your life are just not as enjoyable. Like this, the processes that you have to do, any part of your, so I would just basically audit your processes, see exactly what it is that you have to do in terms of emails, communications, and then Google next to AI, see if there's an app that's been made. There's new apps every day at the moment, so yeah.
All right, I think we'll leave it at that. So thank you very much, Vince. Before you all go, I want to let you know that if you've enjoyed this talk, next week's talk will be Dr. Francesco Bentivegna, and they'll be talking about the relationship between AI, the human voice, and the philosophy of technology. So if you enjoyed this, come along and hear Francesco. If you do want to stick around in Hot Desk today, find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team. We'll be happy to help. Studio team, wave your hands in the air. Oh, it's just the two of us. Find myself or Danielle. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk. Any questions, we'll be happy to help. Thank you all for being here today. You've been a great audience.
Yes.
And we'll see you all here again, same time next week.
Thank you.